"Who sent you?" he said, his voice so quiet it cut right through the sound of the fire still burning behind her. Clara Evans was on her eyes on the gravel. Her lungs were full of smoke. Her right hand was bleeding. And the 8-year-old boy she had just pulled out of that burning mansion, his boy was clinging to her neck like she was the only solid thing left in the world. She looked up at the man standing over her. Dark eyes, no warmth, a face built for giving orders, not receiving answers. "I'm the woman who just saved your son's life," she said. "You're welcome." He didn't blink. That wasn't an answer. If this is your first time here, welcome. Hit subscribe right now and drop a comment telling me what city you're watching from tonight. I want to see exactly how far this story travels. Now let's go. Clara Evans was not supposed to be on Ellsworth Avenue that night. She was supposed to take the bridge on 5th the way she always did after a double shift. But the city had been tearing up the road on 5th for 3 weeks, and Clara was too tired to sit in construction traffic, and so she took the long way around, and that small, ordinary decision, the kind you make 100 times without thinking, was the decision that changed the entire course of her life. She saw the glow first. Orange and violent against the dark sky 3 blocks ahead, the kind of light that your brain registers before your eyes even fully process it. She slowed the car. She told herself she was slowing down to look the way anyone would, and then she would keep driving the way anyone with any sense would. Then she heard it, a child screaming. Not crying, screaming, the kind of sound that lives in a place beneath language, beneath thought, beneath every reasonable instinct a person has. It came through the closed windows of her car, like it had been aimed directly at her. Clara stopped the car in the middle of the street. She got out. She left the door hanging open. "Ma'am?" A man on the sidewalk stepped in front of her. He had his phone out, filming the fire like it was a show. "The fire department's already been called. You can't—" "There's a child in there," Clara said. "You can't go in there." "I heard him. I can still hear him." She stepped around the man. "Move." He moved. Clara ran. The iron gates were open. She went through them without slowing. The front doors of the mansion had been blown open by the heat, or by someone leaving in a hurry she didn't know and didn't stop to wonder, and the air coming out of that doorway was like the breath of something alive, something enormous and hungry, and entirely indifferent to whether Clara Evans lived or died. She pulled her jacket up over her mouth and went in anyway. "Hello!" Her voice cracked against the heat. Smoke hit the back of her throat like a fist. "Where are you? Keep yelling. I'm coming. Here, please, up here, please." The voice was thin, fraying at the edges, but she had it. She had a direction. She took the stairs. Her eyes were burning and streaming. Her lungs were already complaining in a way she recognized clinically. She was a nurse. She knew exactly what smoke inhalation did to a body, which was useful information and simultaneously not even close to stopping her. The screaming was getting louder. She was getting closer. She found him on the second-floor landing, crouched in the narrow space between a door and the wall, with his knees pulled up to his chest and his arms wrapped around them, a small boy with soot-black tears running down his face and eyes that were too large, too frightened, too young for everything happening around him. Clara dropped to her knees in front of him. "Hey!" She grabbed his face in both hands, gently, firmly, the way she grabbed frightened patients who needed an anchor. "Look at me, right here. What's your name?" "Leo." Barely a sound. "Leo, my name is Clara. I'm a nurse. Okay, I've got you. Can you stand up?" "My leg." He shifted and she saw it immediately. He'd been favoring it, had probably twisted it in the panic, but it wasn't a break. She was almost certain it wasn't a break. "I'm going to carry you," she said. "I need you to put both arms around my neck and hold on. Whatever you hear behind us, whatever happens, you do not let go of me. You understand?" Leo nodded. His arms came around her neck and locked there with a desperation that said he had not been held enough or had been held too much. She couldn't tell which, and it didn't matter. Clara stood. She turned. She moved. The sound of the fire had changed in the 2 minutes she'd been upstairs. It was bigger now, louder, hungrier, closer. Something structural had shifted somewhere. She could hear it in the groan of the building around her, the way a house sounds when it stops being a house and starts being kindling. She took the stairs fast. She kept her hand on the wall. She counted steps 14, 15, 16, and at the bottom she turned for the door, And that's when the smoke came down like a curtain, thick and black and absolute, and her lungs seized on her completely. Her knees buckled. She caught herself on the doorframe. Her palm came down hard on wood that was hot enough to burn, and she felt it a sharp, searing pain that shot up her arm, and she made a sound that was involuntary and animal. And Leo's arms tightened around her neck, almost to the point of cutting off air she didn't have enough of anyway. Clara, his voice was a thread. Clara, please don't stop. Not stopping, she said, and the words came out raw and broken, and she pushed off the doorframe with her burning hand, and she moved 3 steps, 4, 5, and then the smoke broke, and the night air hit her like cold water, and she made it down the stone steps and onto the gravel drive, and then she was down both knees, the gravel biting through her pants, Leo still locked around her neck. She got him off her back carefully. She set him in front of her. She checked his face pupils, breathing color. Nurse brain running automatic, running clean, because that part of her didn't know how to stop. You're okay, she told him. Leo, look at me. You're okay, you're safe. You came, he said. He said it like he still couldn't quite believe it. You actually came in. Of course I did. She smoothed the soot off his forehead with her thumb. I heard you. And then a hand closed around her shoulder and spun her around, and Clara looked up and found herself staring into the darkest eyes she had encountered in 34 years of living. He was tall. He occupied space differently from other people, not aggressively, but absolutely the way a load-bearing wall is absolute. His shirt was dark sleeves pushed up, and there was blood drying on his left hand from a cut across his knuckles that he seemed entirely unaware of. His face was the face of a man who had spent a great deal of his life deciding things that could not be undecided. He was staring at Clara with an expression that mixed relief and fury and something cold and surgical that made her skin pull tight across her shoulders. Who are you? Not a question, a demand dressed in the clothing of a question. Clara Evans. She was still on the ground. She did not look away from him. I'm the woman who just carried your son out of a burning building. So if the next words out of your mouth aren't thank you, I'd appreciate a moment to breathe. Something shifted in his expression. There and gone. He looked at Leo. And Daman Moretti, who was not a man known for softness in any context, crouched down on the gravel and pulled his son against his chest with both arms and pressed his mouth against the top of Leo's head. And for exactly 4 seconds, he was not anything except a father. Papa, Leo's voice against his father's shoulder, wrecked with relief. Then Damon stood. He looked at Clara again, and the coldness was back fully assembled. Who sent you, he said. Clara blinked. Excuse me? You heard me? Who sent you to my house tonight? The question landed so far outside her comprehension of the situation that for a moment she simply stared at him. Then the staring gave way to something hotter. I was driving past, she said. I heard your son screaming. I went in and got him. That is the complete and entire story. Women don't run into burning buildings for children they've never met. This one does. She managed to get to her feet, though her legs were substantially less steady than she wanted them to be. And I'd like to go home now. That's not possible. I wasn't asking. Neither was I. He said something in a low voice to the men who had materialized on either side of her. She hadn't heard them coming, hadn't seen them until they were already there, which told her something significant about the kind of operation this man ran. You need medical attention. My physician will see you. I don't need. You have a 2nd-degree burn on your right palm, smoke inhalation, and you are 8 seconds away from going into shock. His voice was clinical, certain. My physician will see you, Ms. Evans, and then we are going to have a conversation. About what? Clara said. About why you were really here tonight. She stared at him. He stared back. The fire was still going behind them, sending orange light across both their faces, and somewhere in the distance, she could finally hear sirens, which meant the fire department was 3 minutes away, which meant there were going to be police, which meant this conversation was going to happen one way or another tonight. Fine, Clara said, but I need to call my daughter first. His expression didn't change. One call, then your phone stays with my people. That is absolutely not. One call, Ms. Evans, or no call, choose. She chose one call. She called her neighbor, Mrs. Patterson, the retired school teacher on the 3rd floor who had Mia's spare key and who Clara trusted more than she trusted most things in this world. She kept the call to 90 seconds. She said she was fine. She said she'd explain in the morning. She said to please keep Mia home from school tomorrow, and she said it in a tone that Mrs. Patterson, bless her, understood enough not to question. When she handed over the phone, Damon Moretti was watching her the way certain men watch things, not like they want to own it, but like they're calculating its value and deciding what it costs to keep it safe. The physician was named Dr. Renner. He was quick, efficient, and spoke in the compressed way of someone who has worked in high-stress environments long enough that small talk had been permanently squeezed out of him. He cleaned and wrapped Clara's burn. He listened to her lungs with an expression of mild professional displeasure. He told her she'd need to rest. I know, Clara said. I'm a nurse. Then you know you should not have done what you did. Probably not, Clara agreed. On my side. And yet, he almost smiled. She got the impression Dr. Renner almost smiled perhaps twice a year at most. When he left her alone, Clara sat in the chair in the east wing room, paneled walls, heavy furniture, the smell of something old and expensive, under the smoke that had followed her in on her clothes, and she let herself feel for just a moment everything she had been holding back since the second she got out of the car. Her hand hurt. Her throat hurt. Her legs were still shaking in small, persistent tremors she couldn't quite get to stop. And underneath the physical, underneath the adrenaline hangover, there was something else. Something she didn't have a clinical name for. A feeling like the ground she was standing on had quietly shifted 3 inches to the left while she wasn't looking, and the world she was going to have to walk through tomorrow was going to be slightly different from the world she'd been walking through up until tonight. She didn't know yet how right she was. The door opened. No knock. Damon walked in. He had changed his shirt. The blood on his hand was gone. He sat in the chair across from her, with the ease of a man who has never once in his life sat in a room where he wasn't the most powerful person present. Leo will be fine, he said. Mild smoke inhalation. The leg is a sprain. Good, Clara said. I'm glad. The fire was deliberately set. He said it the way you say something you have already made your peace with, or at least have decided you will make your peace with later after the necessary things are done. Accelerants on 2 sides of the structure. The security system was disabled 40 minutes before the fire started. My son's security detail was reassigned based on a call that was not authorized by me. Clara went very still. Someone tried to kill Tim. Oh, she said, yes. And you just happened to drive past at exactly the right moment, Damon said. And you just happened to go in, and you just happened to get my son out alive. A pause. In my experience, Evans, very few things just happen. I'm not part of whatever this is, Clara said. I am a nurse. I live in a 2-bedroom apartment. I work double shifts to pay rent on time. I am nobody's. Your ID badge was found at the fire scene. The sentence hit her like a physical thing. She felt it in her chest, a sudden cold compression, like the air had been partially removed from the room. What, she said, your hospital identification badge, found approximately 12 feet from the east wall, the exact location where the first accelerant was concentrated. That's not, Clara's hand went to her jacket pocket, the left one where she always put her badge after a shift. Empty. She checked the right, the inside pockets. She looked at the floor around her chair. Nothing. I have it every day, she said, and her voice was steady, and she was proud of how steady it was. Same pocket every day, 7 years. Someone took it. Or I dropped it somewhere between my car and the... She stopped. She heard how it sounded. She saw in his eyes that he heard how it sounded too. The police are going to want to speak with you, Damon said. Your badge at the scene, your unexplained presence, your financial records, which I've already seen show a level of desperation that a prosecutor will find very useful. I didn't set that fire. I know. Clara stopped. What? I know you didn't set the fire, Damon said. He said it simply. He said it like a fact he had already filed away. If you had set the fire, you would not have gone in to pull Leo out. That is not how people who set fires to kill children behave. Then why? Because someone wanted you at that scene. Someone took your badge. Someone planned for you to be there and planned for your badge to be found there. His eyes were steady on hers. You were not a witness to this, Ms. Evans. You were a component of it. Someone designed tonight around you. The silence that followed was the kind of silence that reorganizes everything inside it. I don't understand, Clara said quietly. Neither do I, not yet. He stood. Which is why you are not leaving. My daughter will be brought here tonight, safely. He moved to the door. Whoever planted your badge at that scene knows your name. They know your address. They know your daughter's school schedule. He stopped with one hand on the frame. You are not safe, Miss Evans. And as long as you are not safe, you are of limited use to me. I'm not an asset, Clara said. No, he said. You're a mother, and mothers who run into burning buildings for other people's children. He paused. Something moved across his face briefly like weather. They are difficult to replace. Stay here tonight. Tomorrow we find out who used you. He left. Clara sat in the chair in the east wing of a mansion that smelled of old wood and smoke, and something she couldn't name, the particular smell of a world that operated by rules she had never been given. And she looked at her wrapped hand, and she thought about Mia, asleep in their apartment with a broken radiator, and she thought about her badge sitting 12 feet from the wall of a building someone had deliberately set on fire to kill an 8-year-old boy. She thought about the way Damon Moretti had said you were a component of it, said it without drama, said it like a man reading coordinates off a map. Calm, precise, already thinking 3 moves ahead. She thought about what it meant that someone out there, someone she couldn't name or see or even begin to imagine, had looked at Clara Evans, a nurse, a single mother, a woman just tired enough to take the long way home, and decided that she was useful. Had taken her badge, had placed her at the scene, had arranged the whole night like a stage before she even arrived, and she hadn't known. She had walked straight into it thinking she was just doing the only thing she knew how to do, the only thing she'd ever known how to do, run toward the sound of a child who needed help. She hadn't known she was already in someone's story. She hadn't known she'd been chosen. She looked at the door Damon Moretti had just walked out of, and she thought whoever did this is still out there. They had planned all of this. They had used her, and they were watching right now to see how it played out. Which meant Clara Evans was no longer just a nurse driving home from a double shift. She was a piece on a board she hadn't known she'd been placed on. And the only question left, the only question that mattered, was whether she was going to let someone else keep moving her, or whether she was going to start learning the rules of the game. Mia arrived at 11:47 at night, still in her pajamas, carrying her stuffed rabbit by one ear, the way she always did when she was scared but trying not to show it. Clara heard her before she saw her, the particular sound of her daughter's footsteps, which she had memorized the way you memorize something you love without meaning to, just from years of proximity, and she was already moving toward the door when it opened, and Mia walked through it, and Clara dropped to her knees on the floor and caught her daughter in both arms and held on. Mama! Mia's voice was small and pressed against Clara's shoulder. Mama, the men who came had really big cars. I know, baby. Mrs. Patterson cried a little. She said she was fine, but she was crying. Mrs. Patterson worries. She's okay. Clara pulled back and looked at her daughter's face, 8 years old. Clara's own brown eyes looking back at her, soot probably still in Clara's hair, and concern written openly across Mia's small face. Are you okay? Did anyone scare you? No, Mia said. Then with the unfiltered honesty of a child, well, a little. The men are very serious. They're always serious, Clara said. It doesn't mean anything. Why are we here? Whose house is this? A man I helped tonight. We're going to stay here for one night, and tomorrow everything will be back to normal. Okay, I promise. Mia studied her mother's wrapped hand. She touched the edge of the bandage with one careful finger. Does it hurt? A little. You always say a little when it hurts a lot. Clara almost laughed. Almost. Go with the woman who brought you in. She'll show you where you're going to sleep. I'll be there in 10 minutes. Mia went. She went the way children go when they trust you completely, and it terrifies you because of how much weight that trust carries. Clara stood up and found that her hands were shaking again, and she pressed them flat against her thighs and told herself to get it together because she did not have the luxury of falling apart tonight. She didn't have the luxury most nights. Tonight was just louder about it. The woman Damon had assigned to watch over Mia, a compact, sharp-eyed woman named Sasha, who had not smiled once since Clara met her, appeared in the doorway. Mr. Moretti wants you in the study. Now. I just need a minute with now Ms. Evans. Clara looked at her, made a decision, followed. The study was at the end of a long hallway on the ground floor of the east wing, the part of the mansion the fire hadn't reached. Damon was standing when she came in, which she hadn't expected. She'd expected him seated behind a desk in the position of maximum authority. Instead, he was standing near the window with his back partially to the door, and there were three other men in the room she hadn't seen before. They went quiet when she entered in a way that told her they had been talking about her specifically. "Ms. Evans." Damon turned. "Sit down." "I'd rather stand." She looked at the three men. "Who are they? People I trust." He said it simply, like trust was a unit of measurement rather than a complicated and fragile thing. "The police contacted my attorney 40 minutes ago. They want to speak with you tomorrow morning about the fire." Clara's stomach tightened. Because of the badge. Because of the badge. And because three witnesses on Ellsworth Avenue placed a woman matching your description at the scene before the fire was reported. He paused. "One of them claims you were standing at the gate before the flames were visible." "That's a lie," Clara said flatly. "I know. I was in my car. I was 3 blocks away when I saw the glow." "I know that too." "Then why are you telling me like it's a problem?" "Because what I know and what can be proven are two entirely different things," Damon said. "And right now the evidence is not in your favor. 3 witnesses, your badge at the scene, no alibi prior to the time you entered the building." He watched her process that. "The working theory among the investigators is that you set the fire, then went back in to pull Leo out in order to present yourself as a hero, to eliminate suspicion." The sheer obscenity of it hit Clara like a fat hand across the face. She stood there and breathed through it. "I went in because I heard him screaming. And the investigators will argue that you knew he was there because you left him there. I had never been to this property in my life before tonight. They will say you were hired, that you came here with a purpose, that your financial situation made you an easy target for whoever orchestrated this." One of the men near the wall shifted slightly. Damon didn't look at him. "Clara, the case they are building against you is not complicated. That is what makes it effective." It was the first time he had used her first name. Neither of them acknowledged it. "What am I supposed to do?" she said. Her voice came out quieter than she intended. "Not weak controlled, barely. You talk to no one without my attorney present. You give no statements. You answer no questions, not to the police, not to anyone, until we understand exactly who built this and why." He turned away from her briefly, a movement that felt like decision rather than dismissal. "Someone used you deliberately. They chose you specifically. Which means you are connected to this in a way you don't yet understand." "I don't have any connection to you. I don't have any connection to any of this." "Not that you know of," said the man near the wall. Clara looked at him for the first time. He was older than dumb and heavyset, with the kind of face that had seen enough that it had stopped reacting to most of it. He was looking at her with an expression that was not hostile exactly, but was measuring in a way that felt like being sized up for something she hadn't agreed to. "Who are you?" Clara asked. "Vincent," Damon said. "My head of security. He's been with me for 19 years. "And what does Vincent think?" Clara asked, keeping her eyes on the older man. Vincent looked at Damon. Damon gave the smallest possible nod. "I think," Vincent said slowly, "that whoever planned tonight knew enough about your routine to take your badge between your shift end and your drive home. That's a window of approximately 22 minutes, during which time you were in the hospital parking garage, walking to your car." He paused. "Which means whoever took it was physically close to you tonight, in the garage, within arm's reach." The room got very quiet. Clara thought about the parking garage, 7 years of the same routine. The same aisle, the same spot, the end of the row under the flickering light that maintenance kept saying they'd fix and never did. She thought about whether she had bumped into anyone, whether anyone had been unusually close, whether there had been anything that had registered even slightly as wrong. There had been a man. Near the elevator, she had thought he worked in the building she'd seen him before, or thought she had the kind of face that you file under familiar without ever actually filing it. He had been on his phone. He had moved past her in the tight space between the cars without making eye contact. "There was someone in the garage," she said slowly. "A man, near the elevator." Vincent straightened slightly. "Describe him." "Medium height, dark jacket. He walked past me close. I remember thinking the aisle was tight. I moved to give him room. She stopped. Felt sick. He was close enough to my jacket pocket. Did you see his face? Partially. He was looking at his phone. She pressed her memory. There was something. She stopped. What? Damon's voice was sharper now. A tattoo on his right hand. I noticed it when he walked past. It was just below his wrist. I didn't think anything of it at the time. The change in the room was immediate and physical. Vincent went still in the specific way that people go still when something important has just arrived. The two other men exchanged a look that Clara didn't have the context to read, and Damon turned away from the window completely and looked at her with an intensity that made the air feel different. What did the tattoo look like? He said. It was geometric, angular, like a pyramid but with one side open. Lines coming off it. Silence. Vincent, Damon said. I know, Vincent said. What? Clara looked between them. What does it mean? Do you know who that is? It means, Damon said carefully, that the man who took your badge is not a freelancer. He works for someone specific, someone with a very specific interest in destroying what I have built. He paused. His name is Luciano Ferro. He is my oldest enemy and my most patient one, and apparently he has decided that patience is over. Who is he? A man who has wanted me gone for 11 years. A man who has tried everything direct and failed. And so now he is trying something else. Damon's voice was completely controlled. He is trying to remove me by removing the things around me. First Leo, now you, your reputation, your freedom, your ability to function. He wants me to spend my energy managing collateral damage instead of watching for the real attack. But why me? Clara said. He could have used anyone. I'm a nurse. I have no connection to you. That, Vincent said quietly, is exactly why he used you. Because you have no connection to us, your involvement looks like guilt rather than manipulation. Because you are a single mother with financial problems, you have a motive any jury will understand. And because you ran into that fire, he stopped. Because I ran in, Clara said, finishing it, hearing it land in her own chest with a particular kind of weight. He planned for that. He knew I would run in. He knew someone would, Damon said. He may not have known it would be you specifically, but he planned for the possibility. He left Leo alive long enough to scream, long enough for someone to hear and respond. And whatever first responder went in nurse, passerby, good Samaritan, that person was going to be found at the scene with your badge. He just needed the right person in the right place. And I was the right person in the right place. Yes, Clara sat down then, not because she wanted to, but because her legs made the decision without consulting her. She sat down and looked at her bandaged hand and thought about how the smallest decision, the bridge on Fifth, the construction, the long wait around, had placed her exactly where Luciano Ferro needed someone to be. She thought about how neatly she had fit into something she knew nothing about. My daughter, she said. Her voice was very quiet. If he used me, if he knows who I am, does he know about Mia? Nobody answered immediately, which was its own kind of answer. He knows you have a daughter, Vincent said finally. Whether he intends to use that, he won't touch the child, Damon said. His voice had a different quality now, final, absolute. Not a promise, something harder than a promise, a statement of consequence. That is a line I will make very clear. Pharaoh understands lines. She's 8 years old, Clara said. She carries a stuffed rabbit. She still asks me to check under the bed at night. She looked up at Damon. If anything happens to her because I took the long way home, nothing will happen to her. He said it again the same way. You have my word. Your word, Clara said. I don't know what your word is worth. He looked at her steadily. Then consider that Leo is alive because of you, and I pay my debts. There was a long silence. Then Vincent moved toward the door and said something quietly to the two other men, and they left, and it was just Clara and Damon in the study, and the sound of the house settling around them, and the distant smell of smoke that would probably be in her clothes for days. There's something else, Damon said. He said it like it had been waiting in line behind everything else, and its turn had finally come. Clara looked at him. Of course there is. The police aren't the only ones who will be looking at you. Pharaoh will be watching too, to see if the frame holds, to see if you run, which will look like guilt, to see how I respond to you. He paused. If I defend you, if I provide you with legal support and protection, it raises questions about our relationship that Pharaoh can use. If I distance myself from you, you face this alone, and the frame holds and he wins a piece of this without ever showing his hand. So what are you going to do? Claire asked. What I should not do logically, Damon said. I'm going to defend you. She stared at him. Why? Because you ran into a fire for my son, he said. I already told you. I pay my debts. This isn't a debt. This is you'd be drawing attention to yourself. Pharaoh expects me to make the safe choice, Damon said. He always has. He understands caution. He understands calculation. What he has never understood about me, and something moved across his face, then something that was not warmth exactly, but was adjacent to it, something complicated and old, is that I am capable of doing the illogical thing. Clara looked at him for a long moment. Outside somewhere in the house, she could hear faint movement. Probably Sasha settling Mia somewhere. Probably Mia asking questions in that relentless way she had, the way that had once driven Clara crazy and now felt like the most precious found in the world. If you defend me, Clara said slowly, the police are going to assume we have a prior relationship. They're going to dig into my life looking for a connection to you. They won't find one. They'll manufacture one if they need to, or Pharaoh will. She paused. He already took my badge. How hard is it to plant an email, a bank transfer, a phone record? Damon's jaw tightened slightly. You're thinking like someone who understands how this works. I'm thinking like someone who's watched true crime documentaries for 10 years and is currently living one, Clara said. I need to know something. Ask. The 3 witnesses who say they saw me at the gate before the fire was visible. Are they real witnesses or are they Pharaoh's people? The fact that Damon didn't answer immediately told her something. The fact that he exchanged a look with the door, the direction Vincent had just gone, told her more. We're looking into it, he said, which means you think at least one of them is planted. Which means we are looking into it, he repeated, but he didn't deny it. Clara stood up. She squared her shoulders. She made a decision with the same clean certainty with which she had decided to get out of the car on Ellsworth Avenue, the same certainty she used every time she acted on instinct instead of reason, and was right. I want to see the footage, she said. Damon went still. What footage? You said the security system was disabled 40 minutes before the fire. But disabled doesn't mean deleted. If there's any footage from before the system went down, cameras on the perimeter, the gate anywhere on the street, I want to see it. Because if I can place myself on Ellsworth Avenue after the fire was already visible, I can blow apart the witness statements. And if the footage shows the man from the garage? The tattoo, Damon said. The tattoo, Clara confirmed. Something happened in Damon Moretti's face then that she hadn't seen there before. Not approval exactly, recognition maybe, like he was recalibrating something about her and finding that the new calculation changed a result he thought he already had. Vincent, he called. Vincent appeared at the door in under 4 seconds, which meant he had not gone far. Pull everything from the perimeter cameras, starting 90 minutes before the fire call. Damon kept his eyes on Clara. Focus on the street-level feeds and bring me the gate footage. Already started, Vincent said. He glanced at Clara with an expression that had shifted barely perceptibly from measuring to something closer to respect. She's smart. She's a nurse, Damon said. Nurses, Vincent said, and left. Clara looked at Damon. What does that mean? It means he once spent 3 weeks convinced that the most dangerous person in a given room was whoever had the quietest hands, Damon said. He respects people who think about evidence. Is that a compliment? From Vincent, it's practically a standing ovation. Clara almost said something. Then she registered what had just happened, the slight shift in Damon's voice, the almost dry quality of it, the first thing that had come out of his mouth since she met him, that wasn't either cold or calculated. It lasted about half a second, and then it was gone and the professional distance was back in place. But it had been there. She filed it away the way nurses file things, not analyzed, just stored, available for later. My daughter is in this building, she said. Tonight she's safe, but tomorrow the police want to talk to me. The day after that, if Pharaoh sees the frame isn't holding, he escalates. She paused. How much time do we have before this becomes something I can't manage? 72 hours, Damon said. Maybe less. If the investigators formally charge you, the narrative solidifies. The press picks it up, the public forms a conclusion, and even when the truth comes out, he stopped. The mud sticks, Clara said. Yes. Then we have 72 hours to find something that proves Pharaoh's people were at that garage, at that scene, something that connects the badge to them instead of to me. She looked at him. Can it be done? Damon looked back at her, and she saw it again, that brief recalibration, that slight shift in whatever he had decided she was when he first pulled her off the ground outside the burning mansion. It can be done, he said. Then let's do it, Clara said. Because I have a daughter sleeping somewhere in your house with a stuffed rabbit and a broken radiator waiting for her back home. And I am not going to prison for something I didn't do. And I am absolutely not going to let some man I've never met burn my life down because I happen to take the long way home. Damon Moretti looked at her for a long moment. The fire had stopped being audible some time ago. The house around them was quiet in the way that expensive things are quiet completely, deliberately, as if sound itself knew it was not welcome. No, he said finally, you are not. He picked up his phone. He made a call. He said 3 words to whoever answered, 3 words Clara didn't catch because he turned slightly away, and when he hung up, he looked at her and said, Vincent found something on the gate camera. You need to see this. Clara followed him out of the study and down the hallway, and into the room where Vincent was standing in front of a laptop screen with the particular stillness of a man who has found the thing he was looking for and is waiting for everyone else to catch up. He didn't say anything when they came in. He just turned the laptop to face them. On the screen, frozen, was a timestamp, 47 minutes before the fire was reported. And in the frame standing at the iron gate of the Moretti estate, with his back partially to the camera, was a man in a dark jacket. On his right hand, where it rested on the iron bar of the gate, was a tattoo, a pyramid with one side open, lines radiating outward. Clara's breath stopped in her chest. That's him, she said. That's the man from the garage. Yes, Vincent said. He zoomed in on the image. And look at what he's holding in his left hand. Clara looked. She looked and she felt the floor tilt under her slightly, not from dizziness this time, but from the sheer velocity of what she was seeing. In his left hand, clear as anything, was a hospital identification badge. Her badge. He was there before the fire started, Clara said. He was there before the fire started, and he had my badge, and he was standing at the gate, which means he was placing it, Vincent said. He wasn't found at the scene by accident. He put the badge there deliberately, and the camera caught him doing it. The room held the weight of that for a moment. Then Clara said very quietly, Pharaoh didn't know about the camera. The main system was disabled, Damon said. The perimeter cameras run on a separate independent circuit. It was installed 6 months ago. It's not on any schematic that Pharaoh's people could have accessed. He looked at the image on the screen. He missed one camera. One. One was enough, Clara said. One was everything, Vincent said. Clara looked at the frozen image on the screen, the man, the gate, her badge, his tattoo, and she felt something move through her that was not quite relief because it was too early for relief. They were too far from the end for relief, but it was the first solid thing she had felt under her feet since she had walked into that building to get Leo. She had been a piece on someone else's board, but the board had just changed. That footage goes to your attorney tonight, she said. Not tomorrow, tonight. Already in motion, Vincent said, and the 3 witnesses. We're looking at all 3. By morning, we'll know who they are and who they answer to. Clara nodded. She breathed. She looked at her wrapped hand, and then at the screen, and then at Damon Moretti, who was looking back at her with that measuring expression that she was starting to understand was not coldness exactly, but a specific kind of attention he gave to things that had earned it. She had earned it somewhere between the stairs in the gravel and the empty pocket in the study. She didn't know yet what it would cost her, but she knew that the next 72 hours were going to determine everything. Her freedom, her name, her daughter's sense of safety in the world, and she had never in her life, not once, not in 16-hour shifts or bill collectors or the crushing, lonely weight of doing it all alone, she had never once let the size of something stop her from walking toward it. She wasn't about to start now. The attorney arrived at 2 in the morning. His name was Marcus Webb, and he walked into the East Wing with the energy of a man who had been woken from sleep and was choosing not to show it, carrying a leather briefcase, and the particular expression of someone who had seen worse than this and survived it professionally. He was Damon's attorney, had been for 12 years, according to Vincent, who offered this information the way he offered most information, as a fact with no decorative language around it. Clara shook his hand. Her wrapped palm protested. "Mr. Webb, Ms. Evans." He looked at her with quick, assessing eyes. "I've reviewed what Vincent sent me on the drive over. The badge footage is significant. Not conclusive alone, but significant." He set his briefcase on the table and opened it in one practiced motion. "Tell me everything, starting from the moment you left the hospital." So Clara told him. She told him about the parking garage and the man with the phone, the tight space between the cars the moment she had moved to give him room without thinking about it. She told him about the bridge on Fifth and the long way around and the glow in the scarnoon. She told him about the screaming and the stairs and Leo in the corner with his arms around his knees. She told him about the gravel and the burning hand and Damon's first words to her. Marcus Webb listened without interrupting once. He took notes in a compressed, precise hand. When she finished, he looked at his notes and then at her and said, "The 3 witnesses are the problem. The badge footage helps us, but 3 separate individuals placing you at the gate before the fire is visible, that's a narrative a jury can hold on to." "They're lying," Clara said. "I don't doubt it, but we need to prove that before the investigators build their case around them." He looked at Damon, who had been standing near the wall, in the way he always stood, present, contained, generating gravity without appearing to try. "I need names. If Farrow planted those witnesses, they'll have a connection to him. Financial, personal, something. I need something to pull on." "By morning," Damon said. "It needs to be before 9. The detective assigned to this, his name is Reyes. He's good. He's not someone you want building momentum. He's already requested a formal interview with Mrs. Evans at 10 o'clock. Marcus looked at Clara. "You will not attend that interview. If I don't show up, if you show up without something to counter the witness statements, he will walk you through a 3-hour interview designed to find inconsistencies. And even honest people have inconsistencies when they've been awake for 20 hours and they're scared." He said it without apology because it wasn't an apology, it was information. "You don't go in until we have something to trade." Clara nodded. She looked at her hands. "And my daughter, how long do we keep her here?" "Until we know the witness situation," Damon said. 2 days at most. She has school. She'll miss 2 days. She doesn't like missing school." Clara said it and then felt slightly ridiculous for saying it because they were talking about the perimeter of a criminal investigation and she was talking about a second grader's perfect attendance record. But Damon didn't look like he found it ridiculous. He looked like he filed it alongside everything else he was learning about who Claire Evans was. "She can use the library here," he said. "Leo's tutor comes 3 days a week. She can sit in." Clara looked at him. "You're offering my daughter a tutor." "I'm offering her something to do that isn't sitting in an unfamiliar house waiting for her mother to tell her everything's okay." There was a pause. Clara decided not to say anything to that. Some things didn't need a response. Some things you just took and added to the pile of things you were going to process when you had time, which was not now. Marcus left at 3:15 with the badge footage, his notes, and a short list of names Vincent had produced by running the 3 witness addresses against every connection to Farrow's organization he could access in 2 hours. The list was not long, but it wasn't empty either. Clara finally slept somewhere around 4. She slept on a bed in the East Wing guest room that was larger than her entire living room in the apartment on Delaney, and she slept the way exhausted people sleep, hard and without dreaming, and with the specific guilt of someone who knows they need the rest but feels wrong taking it. She woke at 6:15 to the sound of Mia's voice down the hall and the smell of coffee. She found Mia in the kitchen with Leo. This was not something she had anticipated. Leo was sitting at the kitchen table with a bowl of cereal, his leg wrapped where he had sprained it the night before, looking somewhat better than he had any right to look, given that he'd spent part of the previous evening in a burning building. Mia was sitting across from him with her rabbit in her lap, and the look she got when she was deciding whether someone was worth talking to, which was a look Clara recognized because it was the same look she made herself. Apparently, Leo had passed the test because Mia was talking. "My mom ran into the fire to get you out." Mia was saying with the straightforward pride of someone stating an obvious fact. She does stuff like that. I know, Leo said. I was there. She got burned. Mia gestured at the general direction of Clara's hand with the rabbit's ear. She won't say it hurts, but it does. Mia, Clara said from the doorway. Mia looked up. Good morning, Mama. Leo's nice. He has 12 remote control cars. Good morning. Clara looked at Leo. How's the leg better? He looked at her with dark eyes that had his father's quality of attention without yet having his father's walls behind them. Thank you, he said, for last night, for coming in. You don't have to thank me. My papa says you always thank people who do hard things for you, even if it was their choice. He paused, considering. Especially then. Clara stood in the kitchen doorway of a Mafia boss's mansion at 6:15 in the morning, with coffee she hadn't poured yet, and her daughter feeding cereal to a stuffed rabbit at the table, and she thought, this is the strangest morning of my entire life. And then she thought it's going to get stranger. Because it always does. She was right. Damon found her 20 minutes later. He came into the kitchen the way he moved through all spaces with that particular quality of full occupation. Like the room recognized him, and he poured his own coffee and stood near the counter and looked at her with an expression she hadn't seen on him yet. Not cold, not calculating. Something adjacent to troubled. Vincent got something, he said. Good or good or bad. Complicated. He set his coffee down. 2 of the 3 witnesses have a documented connection to one of Pharaoh's legitimate businesses, a distribution company on the south side that Pharaoh uses to move money. They're employees, low-level but traceable. That's good, Clara said. That connects them. The 3rd one isn't connected to Pharaoh. He paused. She's connected to St. Matthew's General. The coffee mug stopped halfway to Clara's mouth. What? She said. A woman named Denise Cora, age 41. She's a hospital administrator. She works in billing. He watched Clara's face as the information landed. You know her? Yes. Clara set the mug down. She's in billing. I've spoken to her maybe 5 times. She processes insurance claims for my unit. She felt something shifting under her again, that tilting sensation from the night before. Why would she? She filed for bankruptcy 8 months ago, Damon said. She has a daughter in college, a mortgage that's underwater, and 3 months ago she opened a new bank account that received a deposit of $14,000 from a shell company that Vincent traced back 2 layers before it went cold. Someone paid her, Clara said. Someone paid her to stand on Ellsworth Avenue and tell police she saw you at the gate. He paused. Someone who knew enough about St. Matthew's to pick a witness with a plausible reason to recognize you. Someone who could say, if asked, that she knew your face because she worked at your hospital, to make the identification credible, Clara said. She heard her own voice as if from a slight distance, clear and level, which she was grateful for because her insides were doing nothing of the sort. It wasn't just about finding 3 people to lie. It was about finding people who could explain why they knew who I was. Yes. That's not opportunistic. That's months of planning. That's someone who has been building this for a long time. Yes, Damon said again. Pharaoh has been watching me. The words dropped into the kitchen, and neither of them spoke for a moment. From down the hall, she could hear Mia saying something to Leo about the rabbit's name, and Leo responding with the serious courtesy of a child who had been raised to take other children's concerns at face value. The sound of it, ordinary bright, utterly disconnected from the conversation happening 30 feet away, made Clara's chest hurt with a specific and particular fierceness. How long, she said, how long has he been building this? Vincent estimates the account that paid Cora was established 7 months ago. The tattoo on our man from the garage, we've identified him. His name is Reeve. He's been on Pharaoh's payroll for 2 years. But his movements in the last 4 months included 3 confirmed trips to your neighborhood. 3 trips to, Clara stopped. He's been to Delaney Street. He's been near my apartment. He's been learning your routine, Damon said. The parking garage, the route home, the bridge on 5th, and the reason you take the long way around when it's closed. He met her eyes. Clara, Pharaoh didn't pick you randomly. He chose you deliberately, and he chose you months ago. But why me, she said. It came out raw in a way she hadn't planned. What is it about me, a nurse, a single mother, that Luciano Ferro spent 7 months building a case around that makes no sense? Damon was quiet for a moment. A particular kind of quiet, the kind that comes before something that changes the shape of a conversation entirely. Your father, he said. Clara went very still. My father has been dead for 6 years, she said. I know. He was an accountant. He died of a heart attack. He has nothing to do with any of... His name was Robert Evans, Damon said. And for 11 years before he died, he worked as a financial consultant for 3 different holding companies. 2 of them were legitimate. The third, he paused. The third was a front for Pharaoh's organization. The world went quiet in a way that had nothing to do with sound. No, Clara said. Clara, no, my father was an accountant. He did taxes. He did. He was boring. He was ordinary. He came to every school play, and he fell asleep during the second act of every school play. And he made terrible pancakes on Sunday mornings, and he was not... Her voice broke slightly on the last word, and she hated it, physically hated the sound of it, and she pressed it back down. He was not involved with people like Pharaoh. He may not have known the full extent of what he was working with, Damon said carefully. Many accountants who work with the organizations like Pharaoh's are brought in through legitimate channels. They see numbers. They don't always see the source of the numbers. He paused. But at some point, your father saw something he wasn't supposed to see, and he made a choice. What choice? Damon reached into his jacket pocket and placed a small USB drive on the kitchen counter between them. He documented it, Damon said. Whatever he found, whatever Pharaoh's organization was doing that went beyond what your father was willing to cover, he built a record. Transactions, dates, names. A complete financial map of 7 years of Pharaoh's operation. He looked at the drive. He was going to take it to the FBI. We believe he was 3 days away from making contact when he had the heart attack. Clara stared at the drive. Where did you get that? My people found it 6 months ago in a storage unit registered under your father's name that had been quietly sitting on the south side paying automatic rent from an account no one knew existed. He paused. We were going to use it ourselves, against Pharaoh through channels that it doesn't matter. What matters is that Pharaoh knows the record exists. He doesn't know where it is, but he knows Robert Evans built it, and he knows Robert Evans had a daughter. He thinks I have it, Clara breathed. He thinks you might know about it. He thinks your father might have told you before he died. He's been watching you for months trying to determine whether you're a threat. Damon's voice was very even. When he decided to move against Leo, against me, he built you into the plan as insurance. If you have the record and you become a murder suspect, you can't run to the FBI with it. You're too busy defending yourself. And if I don't have it, then he's framed an innocent woman and created noise that distracts me while he positions for the real attack. He met her eyes. Either way, he wins something. Clara sat down on the kitchen stool. She sat down and she looked at the USB drive on the counter, and she thought about her father, Robert Evans. Boring Robert Evans, terrible pancakes. Robert Evans, who fell asleep at school plays, and she thought about what it meant to learn 6 years after someone was gone that you had never fully known them. Did he know, she said. Her voice was quiet. My father. Did he know he was building a case that was going to cost him? We don't know, Damon said. We don't know if the heart attack was natural. The kitchen tilted. Are you telling me my father might have been... I'm telling you we don't know, Damon said, and he said it with a firmness that felt less like a conclusion and more like a deliberate hand on her shoulder holding her from going somewhere she couldn't come back from right now. What I know is that he tried to do the right thing. Whatever he knew, whatever he saw, he built a record instead of looking away. That tells you something about who he was. Clara looked at the drive. Do you have it? She asked. The record. Do you have what's on that drive? My people copied it when we found the unit. Yes. Then why haven't you used it? You said you were going to use it against Pharaoh. Because using it means exposing how we found it, Damon said, and the chain of custody becomes a question. A defense attorney dismantles it in 20 minutes. He paused. But if the daughter of Robert Evans hands it to the FBI directly, if you hand it over, it came from family. It came from someone who found it in her father's storage unit. The chain is clean. The story is clean. Clara looked at him. You need me. He didn't look away. Yes. You didn't defend me last night out of debt, she said slowly. You defended me because if I'm a convicted arsonist, I'm useless to you. And if Pharaoh keeps me scared and running, I never look at what my father left behind. Something moved across Damon's face. Not guilt exactly, something more complicated. Both things are true, he said. I defended you because of Leo, and because the drive needs you. He paused. I'm not going to pretend otherwise. Clara appreciated that. She would not have believed the prettier version. Okay, she said. Okay, she breathed. Organized her thoughts the way she organized crisis situations at the hospital. Triage first, emotion, later action, now. Marcus needs to know about the drive. If I'm going to hand this to the FBI, I need protection first. Immunity, or at minimum, a guarantee that my involvement in finding it doesn't get twisted into anything. Marcus is already aware of the drive, Damon said. Of course he is. She almost laughed. Almost. In the police interview at Tuftinam, Marcus is going to request a postponement 48 hours, long enough to get the FBI contact established and the immunity discussion started. He paused. Once the FBI is involved, Detective Reyes and his witness statements become significantly less relevant. And Pharaoh, when he finds out the FBI is moving on his financial records, he'll know the drive surfaced. He'll know you're involved. Damon's voice was level. He will react. How puede? Badly. He said it without drama. Which is why you and Mia stay here until it's done. From down the hall, Leo laughed at something Mia said. It was a real laugh, unguarded, the laugh of a child who had been through something terrible and was discovering, with the extraordinary resilience of children, that the day after terrible things is still just a day. Clara heard it, and something tightened and released in her chest simultaneously. There's one more thing, Damon said. Clara looked at him. At this point, she thought the phrase "one more thing" had become the most predictable sentence in her life. Reeve, the man from the garage, the man who planted your badge, he was picked up this morning, 40 minutes ago. One of my people found him at a motel 6 blocks from the estate. Clara sat up straighter. He's alive? He's being held? A pause. He hasn't been brought to the police because I wanted to speak with you first. Why? Because when we bring him in with everything. The footage, the badge, his connection to Pharaoh. We bring him in once we do it right, and we do not give Pharaoh's attorneys a procedural angle to argue. He looked at her. But if we bring him to the police before the FBI contact is established, Pharaoh will know within the hour that Reeve was caught, and he will move. So we hold him until Marcus gets the FBI meeting, Clara said. Can you live with that? Clara thought about it honestly. She thought about what it meant to sit on information, to hold a piece of a law enforcement situation in private hands, while the official process moved around it. She thought about all the reasons that was uncomfortable, and all the reasons that discomfort was a luxury she couldn't afford right now. 48 hours, she said. After that, Reeve goes to the police, regardless of where the FBI conversation is. I won't sit on evidence longer than that. Damon nodded. Agreed. I mean it, Clara said. I don't care what's convenient for your timeline. 48 hours. I said agreed, Clara. The use of her name again. She noticed it again. Filed it again. I want to talk to him, she said. Damon went very still. To Reeve. He was 3 feet away from me in a parking garage. He reached into my pocket. He was at that gate before the fire, and he had my badge in his hand. Her voice was steady, but underneath it was something that had been building since she first looked at that frozen camera frame. Not fear, not anymore. Something cleaner than fear and considerably more focused. I want to look at him. I want him to look at me. Clara. I'm not going to touch him. I'm not going to do anything outside of standing in a room with him and telling him that whatever he was paid wasn't worth it. She paused. And I want to see his face when he realizes that the camera got him. Damon looked at her for a long moment. He had the expression of a man running a calculation that kept coming out in favor of something he hadn't expected to approve. 5 minutes, he said. 5 minutes, Clara agreed. They found Reeve in a room 2 floors below, sitting in a chair with his wrists zip-tied and the careful stillness of a man who knew exactly what kind of trouble he was in and was deciding how much of it to show. He was medium height, dark jacket, precisely as Clara remembered. And when she walked into the room, he looked at her with an expression she hadn't expected. Not defiance, not fear, guilt. It was small and quickly buried, but it was there, and Clara caught it before he could get it all the way down. "You took my badge," she said. He said nothing. "I want you to know something," she said. She kept her voice even. She stood far enough away that no one could argue proximity. "I have a daughter. She's 8. She came to this house last night in her pajamas because someone used me to frame a murder, and she doesn't understand why, and I'm going to have to find a way to explain this to her eventually." She paused. "The camera caught you. At the gate, with my badge. It's already in my attorney's hands, and it'll be in the FBI's hands within 48 hours. Whatever Pharaoh is paying you, it won't cover what's coming." Reeves' jaw moved slightly. His eyes went to the floor. "The only question left," Clara said, "is whether you want to be the man who stays quiet and goes down with everything, or the man who decides that Luciano Ferro is not worth a federal conviction." She waited. "That's not a threat. That's just math." She turned and walked to the door. "He knew about the record." Clara stopped. Reeves' voice was rough and low and came out like something he'd been holding back, not just in this room, but for considerably longer. "Pharaoh, he knew about the record your father built. He's been looking for it for 6 years. When my people confirmed it surfaced in that storage unit, that's when he decided to move. Against Moretti. Against you." He paused. "Against everything at once." Clara turned back slowly. "Why are you telling me this?" Reeve looked at her. His eyes were tired. Not the tired of a man who hadn't slept, the tired of a man who had been carrying something heavy for a long time and had just made a decision about it. "Because I have a kid too," he said. The room held that for a moment. Clara looked at him for 3 full seconds. Then she looked at Damon, who was standing by the door with that contained expression, and she said quietly, "Get Marcus on the phone. Reeve needs a deal." Damon looked at Reeve, then at Clara. Then he took out his phone. The next 12 hours moved fast. Marcus negotiated with controlled fury. The FBI contacted a woman named Agent Torres who answered her phone at 7 in the morning. With the energy of someone who had been waiting for exactly this call, came back within 2 hours with a framework for immunity in exchange for testimony and the drive. The 2 witnesses connected to Pharaoh's distribution company were identified and their statements flagged. Denise Cora, the hospital administrator, the woman Clara had spoken to 5 times about insurance claims, the woman who had taken $14,000 and stood on Ellsworth Avenue and lied about what she saw, called Marcus's office at noon and asked if it was too late to recant. It was not too late. The case against Clara Evans was not gone. Not yet, but it was cracking in ways that Luciano Ferro had not planned for. 3 witnesses down to none. A man in custody with footage to match his face. A financial record 6 years in the making about to land in federal hands. And Clara Evans, who had run into a fire to save a boy she didn't know, was still standing. She was in the East Wing Library at 2 in the afternoon when Damon found her. She was sitting at the table with the USB drive in front of her, just looking at it, not touching it, the way you look at something that belongs to someone you loved and lost before you fully knew them. "Marcus says the FBI meeting is set for tomorrow morning," Damon said. 9 o'clock. "Okay." She didn't look up from the drive. "My father spent years building this. He was going to give it up. He was going to give everything up, his career, his safety, maybe more, to put the right thing in the right hands." She paused. "And he ran out of time." Damon sat down across from her. He said nothing. "Some things don't need a response. Some things you just sit with." "I'm going to finish it for him to hear him," Clara said. "Tomorrow morning, I'm going to walk into that FBI office and I'm going to hand them everything he built. And whatever happens after that, I'll be there," Damon said. She looked up. "You don't have to." "I'll be there," he said again. Clara looked at him across the table, this man with dark eyes and walls like fortifications, and a son who laughed in the kitchen with her daughter, and a capacity for honesty that she had not expected and that kept arriving in moments she wasn't braced for it. She thought about what tomorrow morning was going to come to both of them. She thought about what it had already cost. She picked up the drive. She held it carefully in her good hand. And she thought, "Dad, I've got it from here." Outside the library, down the hall, she could hear Mia and Leo arguing cheerfully about something, who had more remote control cars probably, or whose stuffed rabbit was more structurally sound. The sound of it moved through the walls of the East Wing like something alive. And Pharaoh, wherever he was, did not yet know that the board had turned completely. He would know by morning. The FBI office smelled like recycled air and old coffee and the particular institutional neutrality of a place designed to make everyone who entered it feel slightly off balance. Clara noticed this the way she noticed everything now, with the heightened awareness of someone who had spent 3 days learning that ordinary details could be evidence. She sat across from Agent Torres at 8:58 in the morning with the USB drive on the table between them and Marcus Webb to her left, and Damon Moretti, true to his word, exactly as he had said, sitting 2 chairs down with Vincent behind him, and the expression of a man who was entirely comfortable in a federal building, which was either confidence or excellent acting, and Clara had stopped trying to distinguish between the two when it came to him. Agent Torres was 40 precise with short dark hair and the quality of attention that reminded Clara of the best doctors she had worked with, the ones who listened to the whole sentence before forming a response. She looked at the drive. She looked at Clara. "Your father built this over 11 years, she said. 7, according to what we know, Clara said. But he worked with the organization for 11. It took him 4 years to decide to document it. And in your assessment, he didn't know the full nature of what he was working with when he started. In my assessment, Clara said carefully, my father was an accountant who made a mistake that grew before he understood what it was, and then he tried to fix it." She paused. "I believe that. I need you to understand that I believe that." Agent Torres nodded. "The immunity agreement covers you completely. Your father's estate, his prior involvement, none of it comes back on you or your daughter." She looked at Marcus, who gave a small confirming nod. "What's on this drive, Miss Evans, if it's what Moretti's people say it is the financial backbone of Pharaoh's entire operation. 7 years of transaction records. Shell companies' wire routes names." She picked up the drive. "This ends him." "Good," Clara said. Torres looked at Damon. Something passed between them that Clara couldn't fully read, the look of 2 people who knew each other from a context she wasn't part of, a history that was not being shared in this room. "Mr. Moretti, the terms of your cooperation are noted." "They are," Damon said, "nothing more." Torres stood. The meeting apparently was concluded. Clara had expected more procedure, more paperwork, more of the institutional gravity that she associated with federal agencies. Instead, it was clean and fast and quiet, the way serious things sometimes were, when the people doing them had been waiting for exactly this moment and didn't need ceremony around it. They were outside the building at 9:19. Clara stood on the sidewalk in the thin morning light and breathed air that wasn't recycled and felt something she hadn't felt since the moment she got out of her car on Ellsworth Avenue and heard Leo screaming. She felt like she was standing on solid ground. It lasted approximately 4 minutes. Marcus's phone rang. He looked at the screen and his expression shifted in a way that Clara had learned to read over the last 48 hours, the controlled tightening of someone receiving information that requires an immediate recalculation. "It's Vincent," Marcus said, answering it, and then he listened, and then he said, "How long ago?" And then he hung up and looked at Damon. "Pharaoh's people hit the estate," Damon said. He said it before Marcus could speak, which meant he had already read it in Marcus's face. "When 20 minutes ago, East Wing." Marcus paused. "Nobody was hurt. Sasha got the children out through the back before they reached the 2nd floor." Clara's heart stopped, restarted. "Mia is safe," Marcus said immediately. "Both children are safe. Sasha has them at the secondary location." "I need to see her." Clara was already moving. "Right now. I need to see her right now." "We're going." Damon's hand was at her elbow, not restraining but steadying, and they were moving toward the car, and Damon was already talking to someone on his phone in a voice that was low and fast and had shed every trace of the measured quality she had come to associate with him. This was a different register entirely. This was a man who had just learned his son was in danger for the 2nd time in 4 days, and whatever control he maintained over everything else, this one thing sat below it. And below it, there was nothing but the same animal urgency she had felt on those stairs in the burning mansion. She recognized it because she felt it too. They covered the 12 blocks to the secondary location in 9 minutes. The secondary location was an apartment building, nondescript mid-rise, the kind of building that didn't draw attention, and Sasha met them in the stairwell on the 3rd floor with a contained expression of someone who had done a hard thing well and was still running on the adrenaline of it. "They're in 3C, Sasha said. "I'll be fine." "Both of them, I got them out 4 minutes before Pharaoh's men reached the east wing." Leo's shaken. "The girl—" She paused and something moved across her face. "The girl talked the whole way here. She told Leo a story about a rabbit who saved a king. I think it helped him." Clara closed her eyes for 1 second. Then she opened them and walked to 3C and pushed the door open. Mia looked up from the couch. She was holding the rabbit. Leo was next to her. And when Mia saw Clara, her face did the thing that children's faces do, the thing where everything they've been holding back floods up at once, and she was across the room and in Clara's arms before either of them said a single word. Clara held her. She held her and pressed her mouth against the top of her daughter's head and did not make a sound, because the sound that wanted to come out was not one she was willing to make in front of anyone. "I knew you'd come," Mia said into her shoulder. "I told Leo. I said my mom always comes." "Always," Clara said. Her voice was even. She didn't know how. "I'm here, baby. I've got you." Over Mia's head, she watched Damon cross to Leo. She watched him put his hand on the back of his son's neck in that particular way, not grabbing just present, just placing his hand there so Leo could feel the weight of it. Leo leaned into it slightly. Neither of them spoke. They didn't need to. The two of them, Ayman and Clara, Leo and Mia, in an unremarkable apartment 3 floors above a street that didn't know any of this was happening. Clara thought 4 days ago, "I didn't know any of these people existed." She thought, "And now I would do anything to keep them safe." She filed that thought in the category of things to be examined later. Much later. Damon straightened. He looked at Vincent, who had come in behind them. "How many?" 4 men, armed. Fine. They didn't find what they were looking for. "The drive is with Torres," Damon said. "Pharaoh knows that by now," Vincent said. "He has someone inside the federal building, not deep, we've suspected it for a while, but enough that by the time we were walking out this morning, he would have known the meeting happened. So he moved on the estate as a message," Damon said, "or as a search, if he thought you'd kept a copy." "I did keep a copy," Damon said. The room went quiet. Clara looked at him. "You kept a copy of my father's drive?" "Yes." "Does Torres know that?" "No," Clara breathed it in slowly through her nose. Damon. "The original is with the FBI. Everything they need is on it. But a man like Pharaoh does not get dismantled by one file going to one agency without redundancy." He met her eyes without apology. "If that file disappears from federal custody, if someone loses it, buries it, or gets to it before it becomes a case, I have the copy. And I have the contacts to make sure it gets where it needs to go." "That is not strictly legal," Marcus said from the doorway. "No," Damon agreed. "It's not." Clara looked at him for a long moment. She thought about all the ways she wanted to be angry about this, and the way the anger kept running up against the fact that he was probably right, and that being right about something uncomfortable did not make it any less uncomfortable, but it did make it considerably harder to argue with. "Fine," she said, "but if that copy exists, it stays with someone Pharaoh can't reach." "Agreed. And someone he doesn't know about?" Damon paused. "Not Vincent," Clara said. "Not Marcus. Not anyone in your organization. Someone clean. Someone Pharaoh has no file on." She paused. "Someone like me." The silence that followed was the particular silence of a room full of people recalibrating. "You want to hold the copy," Damon said. "I already hold the original chain. My father built it. I gave it to Torres. If there's a backup, it should sit with someone Pharaoh has already done underestimating." She held his gaze. "He spent 7 months building a case against a nurse he thought was invisible. He forgot to account for what happens when the invisible person stops cooperating with the plan." Damon looked at her. That look again, the one she had cataloged from the beginning. The recalibration look, the look of a man updating a file that keeps expanding beyond its original parameters. "Vincent," he said. "I heard her," Vincent said, and he reached into his jacket and produced a second drive and placed it in Clara's good hand. "I made this copy 6 hours ago." Clara looked at the drive, then at Vincent. "You already thought of this?" "I thought of it," Vincent said. He, a glance at Damon, agreed with me 3 hours ago. "We were waiting to see if you'd get there yourself." "Were you testing me?" We were learning you, Vincent said. There's a difference. She thought about being irritated by that, decided it wasn't worth the energy, closed her hand around the drive. At 11:15, Agent Torres called. Clara took the call on speaker because Marcus insisted and Damon was going to listen regardless of whether it was on speaker. Torres' voice was controlled in the way it had been in the office, that careful professional neutrality, but there was something underneath it now that hadn't been there at 9 o'clock. The drive is authenticated, Torres said. Our financial crimes team has been working through it for 2 hours. What Robert Evans built is, she stopped, started again. It's comprehensive. Dates, amounts, routing numbers, company names, individual transactions going back 7 years. If even 60% of this holds up under verification, Pharaoh is finished. Clara felt Marcus exhale beside her. Felt it before she heard it. There's something else, Torres said. Of course there is, Clara said quietly, because apparently that was just a sentence that lived in her life now. There's a section of the record your father annotated separately from the financial data, a written account. He was documenting more than transactions. A pause. He documented a meeting, approximately 6 years ago, 3 days before he died, a meeting with a man from Pharaoh's organization who came to your father's office and made it clear that his involvement with their accounts was not optional, that the 14 years of records he'd processed were enough to implicate him regardless of his intent. Torres's voice was careful, even. Your father wrote that the man threatened his family. The room was very still. He threatened me, Clara said, and my father stayed quiet. He didn't run to the FBI because they threatened me. He stayed quiet for 3 months, Torres said, and then he started building the record anyway, quietly, carefully, and he was 3 days from contact when she stopped. When he died, Clara finished. His autopsy recorded myocardial infarction, Torres said. Natural causes at 58. A pause. We're requesting an exhumation. The word landed in the room like a stone dropped from a height. Clara heard it. She sat with it. She had sat with worse in the last 4 days, her father's secret life. The drive, the storage unit, all of it. But this one was different because this one was about his body, about the physical fact of him in the ground, about the possibility that the man who made terrible pancakes on Sunday mornings had not simply died but had been taken. Okay, Clara said. Her voice was very quiet. Ms. Evans. Do what you need to do, Clara said. If someone killed him, I want to know, and I want them to answer for it. She paused. All of them. After Torres hung up, nobody spoke for a moment. Mia had fallen asleep on the couch with her rabbit the way children fall asleep when the adrenaline finally runs out completely suddenly without ceremony. Leo had his eyes open but was looking at the middle distance with the expression of a child working through something too large for the tools he currently had. Damon crossed the room and sat in the chair near the window. He sat heavily the first time Clara had seen him sit like that, without the controlled ease with the actual weight of things on him. I'm sorry, he said. He said it to the room, to the air, to Clara specifically. Your father, if Pharaoh had him killed. Don't. Clara's voice was not harsh. It was just certain. Don't apologize for things Pharaoh did. You didn't do them. My war with Pharaoh goes back 11 years. Your father got caught in the middle of it. My father made choices, Clara said. He made a bad one first. Then he spent 7 years making the right one. She looked at the drive in her hand. I'm not going to spend the rest of my life sorting out who to blame. I'm going to spend it making sure what he built actually does what he built it to do. Damon looked at her. There was something in his face she hadn't seen there before. Not the calculating attention, not the cold assessment, not even the recalibration look she had cataloged. Something simpler than all of those. Something that looked, if she was being honest with herself, like the particular expression a person gets when they encounter someone who moves them and they haven't given themselves permission to admit it yet. Clara did not address it. She filed it. Pharaoh is going to move again, she said. Now that he knows the drive is with the FBI, he has 2 options. He either runs, cuts his losses, moves his operation, disappears, or he escalates to destroy everything in reach before the case against him solidifies. He won't run, Damon said. He never has. Then he escalates, and the thing closest to him right now. She stopped. Is this room, Vincent said from the doorway. Is this room, Clara confirmed. He knows the estate was evacuated. He knows the children were moved. He doesn't know where, but he will. He already knows, Vincent said quietly. He held up his phone. 20 minutes ago, someone used a cell tower near this building. It was a burner phone, single ping. No call, just a location marker. He looked at Damon. We have maybe an hour before he confirms it. The room moved in the way rooms move when the situation inside them changes velocity, everyone recalibrating simultaneously, the air tightening. We move, Damon said. He stood. To where? Clara asked. Somewhere Pharaoh has no record of. No property I own, nothing connected to my organization. He paused. Something in your world, Clara. Something clean. Clara thought. She thought fast, the way she triaged at the hospital. What's available? What's safe? What can I reach in the time I have? Mrs. Patterson, she said. My neighbor. She has a sister in Kelmore. It's 40 miles out, a house not connected to me through any record. I've been there twice. I'm not on any lease or registration. You trust this woman? I trust her with Mia's life, Clara said. I already did when I called her from your gate. Damon nodded. Call her. Mrs. Patterson answered on the second ring and said yes before Clara finished explaining. Said it with the uncomplicated firmness of a retired schoolteacher who had decided that Clara Evans was someone worth the inconvenience of a phone call at any hour, and whose idea of an emergency response was to say, I'll call my sister right now, and then do exactly that. By 12:40, they were in two cars heading toward Kelmore. Mia was awake again, sitting between Clara and Leo in the back seat, narrating something to both of them about a book she was reading at school. Leo was listening with visible concentration. Clara watched both children and thought about how resilient humans were, how the capacity to simply continue to simply narrate a book plot in the backseat of a moving car while the world churned around them was one of the most extraordinary things about people when they were young. She hoped they kept some of that. She hoped the world wasn't efficient enough to take all of it. Damon was in the front seat. He turned around once to check on the children and caught Clara's eye, and she gave him a small nod that meant they're okay, and he gave her a nod back that meant I see that, and neither of them said anything, and somehow it was the most complete exchange she had had with him. They were 40 minutes outside the city when Marcus called. Reeve talked, Marcus said, fully. In exchange for the deal, he gave Torres everything. Names, dates, the full structure of how Pharaoh organized the fire, the badge plant, the witnesses. A pause. And he gave them something else. What? Damon and Clara said it simultaneously. Pharaoh isn't operating alone. He has a partner, someone inside your organization, Damon, someone who has been feeding him information for the last 18 months. The car went quiet in a way that was different from the other silences. This one had an edge to it. Damon's voice was very controlled when he spoke. Did Reeve give a name? He gave two. He's not certain which one, but he says it's one of your senior people. Marcus paused. He said it's either Vincent or your attorney. Clara felt Damon go rigid in the front seat. She watched it happen, watched the stillness move through him like something cold running under the surface. She looked at the driver who was one of Damon's men. She looked at the back of Damon's head. She thought about the apartment building, the burner phone ping, the single location marker, 20 minutes after they arrived. She thought about who had known where they were going. She leaned forward and said quietly close to Damon's ear, who knew about the secondary location? He turned his head slightly. He heard what she was actually asking. Vincent, he said, very quietly. And Marcus. Marcus called us, Clara said. He's on the phone right now. Vincent chose the location. The silence between them lasted 1 second. It lasted 100 years. Damon reached forward and ended the call. Then he turned to his driver and said with a quietness that was the most absolute thing Clara had ever heard, take the next exit. Don't signal. Don't slow before you turn. The driver took the next exit without signaling. Damon, Clara said, I know, he said. Vincent has been with you for 19 years. I know, then, if it's him? It isn't, Damon said, and then quieter in a way that held the full weight of 19 years in 3 words, it can't be. But you're not certain. The pause that followed was its own answer. Clara looked at her children, her daughter, and the boy she had carried out of a burning building, who was not hers but felt like something adjacent to hers now, in a way she didn't have a clean word for. She looked at them and she thought about what it meant to trust and what happened when the people you had trusted longest turned out to be the ones you should have been watching. She thought about her father, who had made a mistake and then spent 7 years trying to correct it, who had been threatened and stayed quiet to protect her and then built something anyway because he couldn't make himself look away. She thought about the drive in her jacket pocket, the backup the copy Vincent had placed in her hand. She thought if Vincent is the one who's been feeding information to Pharaoh, he knows I have it. She thought, and we are in a car, and I don't know where we're going. She did not let any of this show on her face. She had gotten very good at that over the last 4 days. Where are we going? She asked, keeping her voice level. Somewhere I decide right now, Damon said. Not somewhere planned, not somewhere anyone told me about. He looked straight ahead. Somewhere I trust. Do you know somewhere like that? A pause. There's a place, my father's property. No one in my organization has the address. It's not in any record. I haven't been there in 9 years. Another pause. Nobody knows about it. Nobody, Clara said. He turned and looked at her, and she saw the pain that was living underneath all of the control. The particular pain of a man who was doing the math on 19 years and not being able to make the numbers give him the answer he wanted. Nobody, he said. I'm certain of one thing. 2 people knew the secondary location. I didn't tell them where we're going now. Whoever it is, they can't follow what they don't know. Clara looked at him for a long moment. Then she sat back. Then she did the thing she had done at the top of those burning stairs when her lungs were failing and her hand was already burning and the only direction was forward. She decided to trust the person next to her. Okay, she said, okay. He looked slightly surprised. Just like that. You've been straight with me every time it would have been easier not to be, Clara said, including when it made you look bad. That's worth something. She paused. Don't make me regret it. I won't, he said. She believed him. In the back seat, Mia had fallen asleep again against Leo's shoulder. Leo was looking out the window with his father's eyes dark attentive, already trying to read the world. He caught Clara looking at him in the rearview mirror and gave her a small, serious nod. She nodded back. 40 miles to Kelmore became an unknown number of miles to a place no one had told Pharaoh about. The city fell away behind them. The road opened up. And somewhere behind them, in the wreckage of a plan that had started 7 months ago, and a secret that had started 11 years ago, and a fire that had started on a night Clara took the long way home, Luciano Ferro was realizing that the pieces he had so carefully arranged were not where he had left them. The board had not just changed. The board had been flipped. And the woman he had spent 7 months treating as a pawn was in a car with the drive that would end him, her daughter asleep on one side, and a boy she'd carried out of a fire on the other, heading somewhere he had no map to. Clara Evans, who had never asked to be in anyone's story, had become the most important person in this one. And she was just getting started. The property had no name. It had no sign at the end of the road that led to it, no mailbox, no number visible from the street. Damon had not been here in 9 years, and he navigated from memory alone 3 lefts after the grain elevator, then the unmarked gravel road, then the second gate, the one that looked like it led to nothing. It led to something. A house. Modest by every standard Damon Moretti operated, by which meant it was comfortable by every standard Clara Evans had ever known. It was his father's house. The man who had built everything Damon inherited and then died before he could see what his son did with it. The man who had told Damon, according to no one, because Damon had never repeated it to anyone, that the most dangerous thing a powerful man could possess was a place nobody knew about. Damon had kept the secret for 9 years. He used it now. They pulled in at 2:40 in the afternoon. Mia woke up when the car stopped and looked around with the clear-eyed alertness of a child whose internal alarm system had been recalibrated by 4 days of irregular sleep in extraordinary circumstances. Leo was already awake. Leo, Clara had noticed, had not fully slept since the fire. He dozed and startled and dozed again, the way people sleep when some part of them has decided that fully letting go is not yet safe. She understood that completely. Where are we? Mia asked. Somewhere safe, Clara said. Mia looked at the house, then at Leo, then back at Clara with the expression she used when she was accepting a partial answer under protest and reserving the right to ask again later. Okay, she said. Does it have a kitchen? Every house has a kitchen, Leo said. Our last apartment didn't really, Mia said seriously. It had a corner. Leo considered this. That's terrible. It was fine, Clara said, getting out of the car. We made it work. Mine inside, Damon moved through the house with the careful attention of someone relearning a space they once knew by heart. He checked the back rooms. He checked the landline still connected, which surprised him enough that his expression shifted slightly. He came back to the main room where Clara was standing with both children and his driver, whose name was Cal, and who had been with Damon for 7 years, and whom Damon had chosen for this drive specifically because Cal was the one person in his organization he was certain had never met Vincent outside of Damon's direct presence. The landline works, Damon said. I heard, Clara said. Call Marcus. I need to think about Marcus. Call him, let him talk, listen to how he talks. She paused. I've been doing triage for 7 years. You learn a lot about what someone is hiding by what they say when they think the crisis is over. Damon looked at her. Then he picked up the landline and called Marcus. Marcus answered on the first ring, which meant he had been waiting. Where are you? I've been trying to reach you for 40 minutes. We moved, Damon said, precautionary. I got cut off. Did you hear what I said about Reeves' information about the mole? I heard. What else did Reeves say? A pause, small, almost nothing. That's everything he gave Torres. She's moving on it. She wants to bring both Vincent and me in for questioning separately today within the hour. Another pause. I told her I'd need to consult with you first. You told a federal agent you'd need to consult before complying with her request, Damon said. Very even. As your attorney, that's Marcus. Damon's voice didn't rise. It never rose. But it changed in a way that Clara, watching from across the room, could hear clearly. When the FBI asks your client's attorney to come in for questioning, the correct response is to go, immediately, without consulting anyone. A silence. The fact that you didn't tells me something. The pause on Marcus's end this time was longer. It had a different quality. It had the quality of a man who has just realized he has shown something he intended to keep hidden. Damon. Goodbye, Marcus. He hung up. He stood with his hand on the receiver for 3 seconds. Then he turned and Clara saw his face and she understood that what she was looking at was the specific grief of betrayal by someone trusted, the grief that is different from every other kind because it requires you to retroactively reread years of loyalty and find the seams where it was never real. Marcus, Clara said quietly, not a question. 19 years, Damon said. And then after a moment, no, 12. Marcus has been with me for 12, not 19. He stopped. Vincent has been with me for 19. Vincent is clean. Yes. He said it with the exhale of a man setting down something heavy. Vincent is clean. Clara crossed the room. She picked up the landline. She called Agent Torres directly on the number Torres had given her that morning, a number Clara had memorized because memorizing numbers was something she did automatically, the same way she memorized medication dosages and allergy flags, information that might matter better held in the head than on a phone someone could take. Torres answered in 2 rings. Ms. Evans. Marcus Webb is your mole, Clara said. He paused before answering Damon's question about your request. He said he needed to consult before complying. He's been feeding Pharaoh information for at least a year, probably longer. She paused. Pick him up before he runs. A 2-second silence. Then Torres said, we're already moving, and hung up. Clara set the receiver down. She turned to find Damon watching her with that look, the one she had filed and refiled over 5 days, the recalibration look, except it wasn't quite that anymore. It had become something else entirely, something she didn't have a clinical name for and wasn't trying to find one. You called it in 4 minutes, he said, from one phone call. I've worked trauma units for 7 years, Clara said. You learned to read the pause. From the kitchen, the sound of Mia instructing Leo on the correct way to make a peanut butter sandwich, and Leo responding that he had a chef who made his sandwiches, and Mia saying that was exactly the problem. Something moved across Damon's face. It was warm. It was unguarded. It lasted long enough this time that he didn't manage to fully put it away before Clara saw it. Neither of them mentioned it. Torres called back at 3:47. Marcus Webb had been taken into custody outside his office building 12 minutes after Damon's call. His phone, his personal phone, the one he never used for client business, had contained 18 months of encrypted messages to a contact that Torres's team had already matched to a number connected to Pharaoh's operation. The messages contained locations, schedules, names, and the details of Damon's legal strategy going back to the beginning of the Pharaoh conflict. Every move Damon had planned, Pharaoh had known about in advance. Every counter, every piece of leverage, every protected location except this one, the one no one knew about, the one Damon's father had built and kept quiet, and that Damon had navigated from 9-year-old memory. Marcus built the immunity agreement, Clara said when Torres told her. He was the one who set the terms. He could have built in something that left me exposed. He didn't, Torres said. The immunity is clean. Whatever Marcus's arrangement with Pharaoh, he kept his legal work legitimate, probably because he knew we'd audit it eventually. There's a pause. The immunity stands Ms. Evans, completely. And Pharaoh, we executed the warrant on his primary accounts an hour ago. The financial crimes team has been working through your father's records since this morning. They have enough for a federal indictment today. Another pause. We're picking him up within the hour. Clara stood in the main room of a house with no sign at the end of its road and heard the words "within the hour" and felt them land somewhere deep and permanent. She thought about her father. She thought about the storage unit paying automatic rent from an account no one knew existed. She thought about a man who had made a mistake and spent 7 years building the thing that would correct it and died 3 days before he could deliver it. He almost made it, she said quietly. He did make it, Torres said, just not in the way he planned. A pause, softer than anything else Torres had said in the 2 days Claire had known her. Your father documented everything with extraordinary care, Ms. Evans, everything. He wasn't just building a case. He was building something that couldn't be argued with, something airtight. A beat. He was protecting you, even at the end. Every annotation, every cross-reference, he was making sure that when it was finally used, there was no way for it to come back on his family. Claire didn't speak for a moment. Thank you, she said finally, for telling me that. She hung up. She stood still. She let herself feel it, all of it, the full, unfiltered weight of the last 5 days and the last 6 years, and the man who had fallen asleep at every school play and made terrible pancakes and said nothing about the thing that was eating him alive because saying something meant risking her. She felt it and she held it and she did not put it down. Some things you don't put down. Some things you carry forward with you as a different kind of weight, the kind that isn't a burden but a ballast, the kind that keeps you level when everything else is pulling sideways. Damon found her in the kitchen doorway 10 minutes later. She was watching Mia and Leo at the kitchen table, both of them working through the peanut butter sandwiches Mia had constructed with the precision of someone who considers sandwich making a serious craft. Torres called me too, Damon said. He stood beside her. Pharaoh was taken into custody 40 minutes ago. Federal agents at his house. He didn't resist. He wouldn't, Clara said. Men like Pharaoh don't run at the end. They calculate until they can't. He calculated wrong. Yes. Because of your father's record. Because of my father, Clara said. And because of a broken radiator on 5th Street in a construction zone on the bridge, and a child who screamed loud enough that someone who'd never met him couldn't keep driving. Damon was quiet for a moment. Then, the charges against you, Torres has already contacted Detective Reyes. The case is being formally closed. Your name is clean. Clara closed her eyes, opened them. The relief was real and enormous, and she let herself feel it for exactly 3 seconds, and then she put it somewhere to be properly felt later, when there was time when Mia was asleep and the house was quiet, and she could sit with it the way it deserved. And Vincent, she asked, already told. He cried. Damon's voice had something quiet in it. Vincent has cried twice in 19 years in my presence, once when his wife died and once just now on the phone. A pause. He says he's going to personally dismantle Marcus's entire life in ways the federal government isn't authorized to pursue. Tell him to stay legal, Clara said. I'll pass that along. Damon, I'll strongly suggest it, he said. From the table, Mia looked up and said, Mama, do you want a sandwich I made extra? In a minute, baby. Leo says he's never made his own food before. I'm teaching him. Leo looked slightly embarrassed and entirely pleased. She's a good teacher, he said with the dignity of a child who has decided to commit to the situation. Clara felt it again, that thing she had been filing and refiling since the second morning in the East Wing. That feeling that the world she was standing in was not the world she had been standing in a week ago, and the difference was not only the terrifying parts, but also unexpectedly the parts that looked like this. A kitchen, two children making sandwiches, a man beside her who said what he meant even when it was inconvenient. She turned to look at Daman directly. What happens now? He met her eyes. For federal prosecution, it will take a year, maybe two. Torres says the record your father built is solid enough to survive the defense's best efforts. He paused. For Marcus, the same. Federal charges, conspiracy obstruction, breach of fiduciary duty at minimum. That's not what I meant, Clara said. He knew it wasn't. She saw that he knew it. For you, he said slowly, the case is closed. Your name is clean. Your badge, he almost smiled very slightly, is presumably back in evidence somewhere. You can go home to Delaney Street and the broken radiator. They fixed the radiator, she said. Mrs. Patterson called the building manager 4 days ago and apparently told him that if it wasn't fixed by Friday, she was going to report every code violation in the building simultaneously. It was fixed by Wednesday. Remind me never to underestimate retired school teachers. You'd be amazed, Clara said. A silence, a comfortable one which surprised her. She had not expected comfortable silences with this man. She had expected everything to have an edge, the way everything had had an edge from the moment he looked down at her on the gravel outside the burning mansion. But the edge had changed character over 5 days. It was still there. It just felt like something different now. Like the edge of something opening rather than something closing. Leo asks about you, Damon said. When you're not in the room. He asked where Clara is. He's done it every day since the fire. Clara looked at Leo, who was currently explaining something to Mia about remote control cars with the seriousness of an expert witness. He's a good kid, she said. He's a better kid than he was last week, Damon said, which I didn't think was possible, but apparently being carried out of a burning building by a stranger who talks to you like you matter does something to a person's character. He paused. He hasn't had nightmares about the fire. Not once. When I asked him why, he said it's because he knew someone would come. Clara felt that in her chest. He shouldn't have had to wait for someone. No, he shouldn't. Damon's voice shifted. I've spent 11 years building walls around everything I care about, and it didn't protect him. One night, in the one moment my walls had a crack in them, it wasn't the walls that saved him. He looked at her. It was you. Anyone would have. No, he said simply. They wouldn't. 3 people on that sidewalk stood there with their phones out. You got out of the car. He held her gaze. Don't minimize what that was. I've been around calculated people my entire life. I know the difference between someone who acts because it costs them nothing and someone who acts because they can't not. You couldn't not. A pause. That is the rarest thing I've encountered in 42 years. Clara looked at him for a long moment. She thought about all the things she could say. She thought about how much she had learned to hold in single motherhood trained you that way. You learned to carry enormous things without putting them down in public because public was where Mia was. And Mia needed a mother who was upright and functioning. She had gotten so good at holding things in that sometimes she forgot she was doing it. She didn't want to forget right now. You kept your word, she said. Every time you said you'd do something, you did it. I didn't expect that. You expected a mafia boss. I expected a man who uses people, she said. And you do. You're honest about it, but you also, she stopped, started again. You sat with me when I found out about my father. You didn't say anything useful. You just sat there, and that was exactly right. A pause. That's not nothing. He was quiet for a moment. I'm not a good man, Clara. I know. I've done things that can't be undone. I know that too. And you're still standing here. I'm standing here because my daughter is in there making sandwiches and the case is closed and Pharaoh is in federal custody and I haven't slept a full night in 5 days, Clara said. And because, she stopped. Because, he said. She looked at him, at the dark eyes that had been cold when she met them and were something entirely different now. At the face that had shown her in fragments over 5 days what lived underneath the walls. At the man who had said, I pay my debts, and meant it in more ways than the obvious one. Because running away from things has never been something I know how to do, she said. Something happened in his expression. The walls came down fully all the way for the first time since she had met him, and what was underneath them is simply a man who had been carrying everything alone for a very long time and had just been offered something he hadn't let himself want. He reached out. He took her unwrapped hand, the good one, carefully with the deliberate gentleness of someone who was not naturally gentle, but was choosing it, and he held it. Not dramatically, not with words, just held it standing beside her in a kitchen, in a house with no sign at the end of its road, with the sound of their children talking about sandwiches and remote control cars on the other side of the wall. Clara let him. 3 weeks later, Luciano Ferro was formally indicted on 47 federal counts, including racketeering, conspiracy, and suspected homicide. The financial record built by Robert Evans over 7 years was entered into evidence as Exhibit A. The case against him was described by the lead prosecutor as the most comprehensively documented criminal financial history she had encountered in 22 years of federal prosecution. The exhumation results came back on a Tuesday. The medical examiner's report cited irregularities consistent with a specific compound not included in the original toxicology screen. The manner of death was reclassified. Robert Evans' accountant father, terrible maker of Sunday pancakes, was added to the list of charges against Ferro on a Wednesday morning. Clara received the call in the parking garage at St. Matthew's General 2 weeks into her return to work. She was in the same aisle, the same spot under the same light that maintenance had finally fixed. She stood by her car and listened to Torres read the reclassification, and when Torres finished, Clara said thank you and hung up and stood there for a moment, with her hand flat against the roof of her car and her eyes closed. She thought about her father, about the storage unit, about the dram, about 3 days and running out of time, and the particular cruelty of almost. She thought about the 7 years he had spent building something airtight, something that couldn't be argued with, something designed to protect her even after he was gone. She thought he did protect her. In the end, from beyond everything, he protected her. I know, Dad, she said quietly to the fixed parking garage light. I know you tried. She got in the car. She drove home. Home was still the apartment on Delaney Street because it was where Mia's things were, and where Mia's life was, and where the radiator now worked perfectly, and where Mrs. Patterson brought them soup on Thursdays for no stated reason. The familiar things, the solid things, the things that had been there before the fire and were still there after it, unchanged and reliable in hers. But on Friday evenings, Clara drove 40 minutes across the city, and Leo had started calling her on Wednesday afternoons to tell her things that had happened at school. Small things, the kind of things you tell someone when you want them to know your daily life. And Mia had extracted a solemn promise from Damon that she would one day be permitted to drive one of the 12 remote control cars, a promise Damon had given with the seriousness it apparently deserved. And Damon called every night at 9. Not long calls, not dramatic ones, just the call itself, his voice a few minutes, the specific comfort of someone on the other end of the line who knew what your week had contained because they had been part of it. One Thursday night, Leo got on the phone before Damon could and said without preamble, "When are you and Mia coming to live here?" Clara blinked. "Leo, we have a lot of rooms. The East Wing has a broken window, but Vincent says he'll fix it. Mia said she'd share the room with the good light if I gave her 2 of the remote control cars." A pause. "I said yes. You negotiated with my daughter about real estate." "She's very good at it," Leo said admiringly. Clara laughed. It came out full and real and unguarded, the kind of laugh that belongs to someone who has been through something enormous and discovered on the other side of it that the ordinary things are still there and still good. She heard Damon's voice in the background, saying Leo's name in a tone that held equal parts exasperation and suppressed amusement. "He wants to talk to you," Leo said. "He's doing the face." "What face?" "The one where he's pretending he's not smiling." The phone changed hands. "My son," Damon said, "has apparently been conducting housing negotiations on my behalf." "He's effective," Clara said. "He gets it from his father." "Does he?" A pause. "I had a different plan for how to ask this." "Did you?" "It was significantly more composed than whatever that was." "I liked whatever that was," Clara said. Another pause. Warmer. "Clara." "Damon." Come home, he said. Simple. Direct. No performance around it. Just the two words and the full weight of everything behind them. A day that had lasted a lifetime. A fire that had burned everything down to the one true thing, a man who had spent his entire life in rooms where trust was a liability and had decided with the same illogical certainty he had described to her the first night to do the thing that made no calculated sense. Clara sat with the word home and felt it fit in a way she hadn't expected. She thought about running toward things instead of away from them. She thought about what it looked like to choose every single day the harder and braver direction. She thought about her father who had made a mistake and then spent 7 years correcting it. She thought about a bridge on Fifth Street and a long way around and a child who screamed loud enough to change everything. She thought about all the ways the smallest decision, a road taken, a car stopped, a door entered, could become the exact moment your whole life turned. Okay, she said. Okay. He almost laughed. She heard it. I already told you, Clara said. Running away from things has never been something I know how to do. She could hear Leo in the background asking if she said yes, and Damon saying something too low to catch, and Leo making a sound of pure, uncomplicated triumph. She could hear Mia in the next room singing something to the rabbit off key and entirely committed to it. She sat in the apartment on Delaney Street where the radiator finally worked and the light in the kitchen was good and Mrs. Patterson's soup was still warm on the counter, and she felt not the relief of crisis survived, not the exhaustion of the extraordinary, but something simpler and deeper and more permanent than either. She felt like herself, fully, completely, without apology. The woman who stopped the car, the woman who took the stairs, the woman who held a frightened child and said, I've got you, and meant it with a limit or condition. The woman her father had spent 7 years trying to protect. The woman who had, in the end, protected herself. Clara Evans had run into a fire for a child she didn't know, and on the other side of it, she had found her father's courage, her own name cleared a boy who called on Wednesdays, and a man who said, come home, like it was the truest sentence he'd ever spoken. She had gone in to save one life. She had come out with everything.